Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're jumping straight into, well, a really stunning contrast from Australian labor law.
That's right. We've got two recent workplace disputes, both involving drug and alcohol testing.
And they really illustrate this razor-thin line, don't they, between a fair dismissal and, frankly, a massive payout.
Absolutely. We're looking at cases decided by the Fair Work Commission, the FWC. They rule on unfair dismissal claims here in Australia.
And the outcomes are maybe not what you'd expect at first glance. It seems like the process often matters more than the actual incident.
That's exactly it. So our mission today, for you listening, is to really uncover those procedural nuggets, the small details that made all the difference.
Okay, so on one side, picture this. An office worker. She refuses a drug test after what's described as a 4-hour boozy lunch, and she walks away with over $63,000 in compensation.
$63,500 to be precise.
Right. And then, the flip side. A security guard. Someone finds drug paraphernalia, a bong, actually in the gatehouse microwave. He tests positive for meth, way over the limit.
Yeah, 4 times over the company's policy limit.
And he gets dismissed. The FWC upholds it. No compensation.
So the big question is why? Why did the refusal lead to a win and the clear policy violation lead to a loss? That's what we need to unpack.
Let's start with the winner then. The $64,000 case, roughly. Chantel Tamati versus MQT Proprietary Limited. She was in a management role, right? Sydney Transport Company.
Yep, an office worker in management. So the whole thing kicks off on April 10th, 2025. Ms. Tamati goes out for a long lunch with colleagues. 4 hours.
Okay, 4 hours is quite a lunch.
It is. She admitted to the FWC she had one Jim Beam and Coke, also pizza, soda water. And apparently these long lunches weren't totally out of the ordinary at this particular company, MQT.
Huh. Okay. But things went sideways when she got back.
They did. One of her lunch companions apparently became disruptive, ended up resigning later, but management then focused on Ms. Tamati.
And what did they claim?
They alleged she was slurring some words, maybe repeating questions. Someone even claimed she asked out loud, "What day is it?"
Okay, so based on that, a safety manager asked her to take a breath test, citing, the company's duty of care. Seems reasonable on the surface.
Well, that's where it gets interesting. Ms. Tamati initially agreed, but then she started pushing back. She wanted to know the specific grounds for the test.
She felt targeted.
Yes, exactly. She said she felt unreasonably attacked and basically tarnished by association with the colleague who'd caused a scene.
But hang on, let's pause there. She admitted drinking, even if it was just one drink over 4 hours. Supervisors reported slurring. Wouldn't that be reasonable grounds for suspicion? Why didn't the FWC just say, look, they had cause?
Ah, that's the absolute crux of it. The FWC insists that any direction to test, it has to be reasonable. And when Ms. Tamati questioned them, asking for the specific reason, well, the managers sort of stumbled.
They couldn't give a straight answer.
They couldn't give a consistent answer, and that was fatal for their case.
What did they say? What were the reasons they gave?
It was all over the place. First, one manager apparently said it was a random test.
Okay.
But then, almost immediately, they contradicted that. They said, no, it's post-incident and for cause, based on her behavior.
Right, so which is it? Random or for cause?
Exactly. And when she pressed them on the cause part, what specific behavior triggered it, another manager apparently just blurted out, because you went to lunch.
Oh, dear. That's not a valid reason under most policies, is it? Just going to lunch.
Not usually, no. It showed a complete lack of procedural clarity. They just weren't prepared or clear on their own policy application.
So they were insisting the test was a lawful direction,
Right.
warning her refusal was serious misconduct. But their justification was shifting sand.
Precisely. So she refused. And MQT summarily dismissed her for refusing that supposedly lawful direction.
And the problems didn't stop there, did they? What about after the suspension?
No, it got worse, procedurally speaking. The FWC found that MQT managers told her they'd conduct an investigation into the initial impairment claims, but they never actually did one.
Really? They just skipped that step?
Seems so. And critically, during that initial meeting where they demanded the test, they didn't even give her a copy of the company's drug and alcohol policy. She had to ask for it later.
Wow. So the FWC ruling.
It landed hard on MQT. The dismissal was ruled unfair. Why? Because the direction to take the test was not reasonable.
Because they couldn't give a clear, valid reason based on their own rules.
Exactly that. They failed to articulate one single valid reason. And interestingly, the FWC also noted MQT's own policy listed specific signs of intoxication.
And her alleged behavior didn't match.
The signs management cited like the slurring or speaking loudly. They didn't actually line up properly with the indicators in their own policy. The whole basis for the direction was flawed.
So because the direction itself was unreasonable, her refusal wasn't misconduct.
Correct. It wasn't a refusal of a lawful and reasonable direction.
And the cost for MQT?
$63,500 in compensation awarded to Ms. Tamati. Reinstatement wasn't really practical as she'd already found another job, although it paid less. But yeah, a huge penalty for basically procedural chaos.
A very expensive lesson in following your own rules.
Indeed. Okay, now let's pivot. Completely different scenario, different outcome. Jethro Asa versus Southern Cross Protection. This one shows what happens when a policy is clear, reasonable, and there's a serious violation.
Right. This involves Mr. Issa, a full-time security guard, critical overnight shifts at a distribution center. Very safety-sensitive role.
Highly safety-sensitive. And the trigger here wasn't a boozy lunch. It was quite something else. A day shift employee reported finding a bong in the microwave oven just now. In the gatehouse.
In the microwave. Seriously. Okay. That's memorable.
Definitely gets your attention. So because of that paraphernalia discovery and the nature of the job, the company rightly decided to test the staff who worked in that area.
Makes sense. So Mr. Issa was tested. This is November 21st, 2024.
Yes. And during the testing process itself, he actually admitted using drugs, specifically methamphetamine and MDMA, but he said it was within the past week on his days off.
Okay, so he admits use, but claims it wasn't on work time. What did the test show?
The lab results confirmed methamphetamine, and the concentration was high, really high, 208.3 nanograms per milliliter NGML.
280.3. And what was the company's limit?
Southern Cross Protection's policy set the cutoff for amphetamine-type substances at 50 NGML.
50. So he was, wow, more than 4 times over their limit.
Over 4 times, yes. So the company summarily dismissed him for serious misconduct, citing the positive test result.
But Mr. Issa challenged it. He filed an unfair dismissal claim.
He did. His argument was essentially what he'd said during the test. Yes, the result was positive, but it didn't prove he was impaired or under the influence while he was actually on duty. He stuck to the days off story.
A common argument in these cases, right?
Yeah.
Proving impairment versus just presence.
Very common. But Southern Cross Protection came prepared. They presented evidence from a toxicologist.
And what did the experts say?
The toxicologist argued that a concentration as high as 208.3 NGML strongly suggested use within just a few hours of the test, not days before.
Implying use closer to or potentially during his work shift.
Exactly. Or at the very least, that he was likely still experiencing significant effects while performing his safety-critical duties. That was their argument.
So how did the FWC rule in this one?
They sided with the employer. They found Southern Cross Protection did have a valid reason for the dismissal.
Why? What was the key reasoning?
They found the company's drug and alcohol policy, including the testing requirement and the cutoff levels, was a lawful and reasonable direction, particularly given the safety aspects of being a security guard.
Okay, that makes sense. But did they actually conclude he must have used drugs on duty?
Ugh. See, this is a crucial distinction, and it mirrors the Tamati case in reverse. The FWC explicitly stated they were not satisfied. They could definitively say he consumed the drug while on duty. They noted, quite technically, that a single saliva test level can't pinpoint the exact time of use.
Right, so they didn't fully accept the toxicologist's timing argument.
Not definitively, no. However, they found that the sheer severity of the positive result, being over 4 times the company's clearly stated limit in itself, constituted serious misconduct under that reasonable policy.
So the timing wasn't the deciding factor. It was the magnitude of the violation against a clear, reasonable rule in a safety role.
Precisely. The policy violation was so significant, it justified the dismissal regardless of the when did he take it debate.
And Mr. Ice's unfair dismissal claim was rejected.
Correct. No payout there.
So the security guard, clear policy violation, massive test result, dismissal upheld. The office worker refused the test due to employer bungling the process, gets compensated.
That's the stark contrast. And if we try to, connect the dots for you listening, what does this teach us about workplace rights and employer responsibilities?
Well, it seems the FWC puts immense weight on the reasonableness of the employer's actions and whether they followed their own procedures properly.
Absolutely. ICE's case, the microwave bong one, confirms that if you're in a safety-critical role and you clearly violate a reasonable policy by a significant margin, that's likely a valid reason for dismissal. The high test result sealed it.
But Tamati's case is almost the more instructive one, isn't it?
I think so. It's a masterclass in what not to do as an employer. The incident itself, the lunch, almost became irrelevant.
It was all about the process breakdown.
Exactly. MQT's failure to give a clear reason, the conflicting justifications, skipping the investigation, not providing the policy up front, all that proved the direction to test was unreasonable.
So the FWC penalized MQT for failing to follow its own rule book fairly and consistently.
That's the heart of it. They weren't really rewarding Ms. Tamati for refusing. They were penalizing MQT for issuing a faulty, unreasonable instruction.
So the big takeaway for both employees and employers listening, you can have the best written policy in the world on paper.
But if you fail to execute it fairly, transparently, consistently, if you can't clearly justify why you're demanding a test under your own rules, especially for cause,
then the dismissal can be overturned, and it can cost you, well, potentially $64,000 or more. Consistency and reasonableness are everything.
Right. The sources really drive that home. Winning or losing these cases often hinges less on the headline event, the lunch, the positive test, and much more on whether the employer acted reasonably and stuck to their own documented process. Every single step.
Which leaves us with a really practical final thought for you, the listener.
If you're an employee, have you actually looked at your employer's drug and alcohol policy recently?
Does it clearly spell out what specific, observable behaviors would justify them directing you to take a test for cause?
And what does it say are the exact consequences for refusing a test? Is refusal automatically dismissal, or does it depend on the circumstances?
Because, as we've seen today, that lack of clarity, that ambiguity, or just plain procedural failure.
That can be the difference between a justified dismissal and a very, very expensive mistake for an employer. Knowing the rule book, your rule book matters.
Absolutely critical. Go find your rule book. That's all for this deep dive. We hope this look at workplace relations and employee rights has been useful.
We look forward to exploring more complex cases and issues with you again soon.